backstage in WCW when you went there the final time. You mentioned Vince Russo and Hulk Hogan and all that folderol that happened there. I'm going to give you a couple more examples. I think DDP and Buff Bagwell tried to stage a fight in the catering to make it seem... Just all this kind of nonsense that WCW was doing, or the guys of WCW were doing in the back to convince just the other boys that the rivalry was real. Have you got any specific examples of that happening?
Of work shoots?
Yeah, work shoots trying to convince the boys, not the fans.
Not really. To me, the overriding thought of what was going on in the dressing room at that time was truly the inmates were running the asylum. They would, when you'd get to TV, there would be a big whiteboard and they'd have the entire 2-3 tapes when they were doing the tapings. You had a lot of matches written up there, and you'd go through and you'd find your matches and where they were. You'd note them down, and then I would start to think, okay, what can I do with Goldberg? What can I do with this person? And I'd start my wheels working on my matches. Like, what can I do for my matches? Well, every taping. There were multiple people, but one I remember specifically was Kevin Nash. Would walk in and he'd look at the board and he'd get the eraser and he'd go. And start erasing matches. Then he'd write other matches in. Then the company would do those matches. So a couple of times, like, my matches were involved. So, like, I've got ideas I've already set up, and now that's gone someplace else. It was real. There was a lot of tension. You could cut it with a knife in the dressing room because there was generational heat, for lack of better terms. And I always found that odd because that very first match with Randy Savage in WWF, this guy's the top heel on the planet. And I'm just a nobody kid. And he came back and he kept thanking me. But thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Kept doing that. And I said, Randy, that's not necessary. That's what we do. He goes, and he jumped up and put his, no, it is necessary. He said, if you ever want to have a career in this business, make sure you thank the guy that put you over because he's allowing you to have that. And I always, always, always have remembered that. We've all done favors. We've all had favors done for us. And there is a realism in this business of we're all getting older, right? And what the franchise was in the 90s, I couldn't possibly do today. And I'm fine with that. That's a very fond memory in my head, but I am fine with where I am in my life right now. And if I could do something to help teach the other kids and elevate them and give them how it was given to me, I'm a teacher by nature, so I'm more than willing to do that. I just recall that dressing room being, you could sense that there was an end coming. Like at this, think of this moment. I mean, this company's a big company, a conglomerate owned by a conglomerate. There's the week we got sold, I think we did a 5.6 in the ratings. So, hardly that we're on our knees. We were just not doing as well as WWF at the time. So by any stretch, by the way, I went back several years ago and looked at that time slot on TNT since. I think the highest rating they've had in that time slot since then, when I checked, it was like a 1.3. So 5.6 to 1.3. I'm sure that they'd like to revisit that idea if they could get in a time machine. But the point was that every generation in this business, there's a time when they're coming up, there's a time when they dominate, and there's a time when they're sort of leaving or exiting the business or passing the torch. That's how it's always gone. Bruno did it. Generation before his did it. Every generation does it. And I found with Hogan's and Flair's generation, they were very, very oppositional to that.